But we begin this morning with the historic arraignment of former President Donald Trump. The former president pleading not guilty to 34 felony charges in a New York courtroom just yesterday.
Yeah, the hearing lasted longer than expected, just less than an hour. Photos taken inside the courtroom show Mr. Trump appearing stoic. Well, during that arraignment, prosecutors laid out a broader picture of what they called an unlawful plan to suppress negative information that could have affected Trump's 2016 presidential campaign.
These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are. We cannot and will not normalize serious criminal conduct.
We have full team coverage with NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard in Florida and legal analysis with Danny Savalos. But we begin with NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, you were right in the thick of things yesterday, actually inside the courtroom, even though cameras weren't actually allowed during that arraignment. Talk to us about what that experience was like there.
Well, Stephen and Zinkley, good morning. Inside the courthouse, it was a surreal scene. To see the former president of the United States plead not guilty in his own voice was just incredible. He was flanked by Secret Service personnel. There was incredible security getting into the courthouse. We had to go through metal detectors on the first floor, then once again on the 15th floor. And the former president, you saw in those still pictures, was stoic, somber the entire time. But he did seem to be defiant, saying very little inside that court proceeding except to plead not guilty and then also to tell the judge that he understood his rights. But this arraignment was unlike anything I've ever seen. We kept saying that the proceedings were just going to take 5 or 10 minutes, that it'd be some sort of formality. This was not. It devolved into basically opening statements for this trial as both sides tried to make their points, and then the prosecution blasted the defendant for making these posts on social media, forcing the judge essentially to comment on what he called charged rhetoric and issue a warning to both sides to not use any language that could incite violence.
I mean, all eyes on this, Gabe, and I know Trump's defense team said, you know, we expected the charges that we saw, but there were some surprises, specifically from the Manhattan DA's filings. Can you talk about your big takeaways there?
Certainly, and look, a lot of people were waiting on those filings. We've been talking about them for so long, and we finally got them on paper. 34 counts, 34 felony counts for falsifying business records. Now, there are still some questions about this as this case moves forward. This was, and I'll defer to Danny on much of this, but this was the indictment and then also a statement of fact that kind of tried to fill in the gaps. We heard, you know, the Manhattan DA talk about hush money payments, not just to the adult film actress Stormy Daniels, but also former Playboy model Karen McDougal, and also a Trump Tower doorman. Those last two were not actually part of the charges, but they were included as part of the statement of fact. And the district attorney is now having to answer how 34 misdemeanors, they're usually misdemeanors, how they're going to be upgraded to felonies. And so that's raising a lot of questions. And certainly Donald Trump's defense team is seizing on that.
A big task.
Already are seizing on that. And the issue of a gag order, you mentioned the inflammatory rhetoric that we've seen, the judge talking about social media posts, sort of asking everyone to keep things calm. That didn't end up happening. We'll talk more about Trump's speech last night. But what did the judge actually say about the gag order?
And notably, the prosecutors did not ask for a gag order, but they did raise the issue that at some point they would ask for a restrictive protective order, because as this case moves forward, there will be lots of discovery, lots of evidence that the prosecution will need to provide defense over the coming months. The prosecutors were clearly worried that such a high-profile defendant could share that evidence, share that discovery, post it on social media. And so they asked the judge, and are working on some sort of restrictive order to do that. The judge said he didn't want to go that far. The judge said that he would not impose a gag order even if the prosecutors had asked for it, because he has to walk a very fine line. He realizes that former President Trump is not just a former president, he is a current candidate for president. And so he's running into, the judges running into some free speech issues. So he did not issue a gag order, but he did request, he didn't order, he ordered both sides, notably the president's side, the former president's side as well, not to use that charged language that would incite violence. But again, I know you'll get to the speech, the former president last night also took direct aim at the DA and the judge in his speech last night. Will be interesting to see how this plays out going forward and how the judge eventually responds.
Yep, lots of complications here. All right, Gabe, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, let's turn to NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard in West Palm Beach, Florida. Vaughn, good morning to you. So, as we were just talking about that speech last night, Trump's first public reaction to that court appearance after the judge asked both sides to tone down the rhetoric. Trump still going on the offensive, including those personal attacks. Was this all sort of expected from him?
Right, and just to be fair, though, the judge said both sides. Only one side has inflamed rhetoric or suggested, in Donald Trump's word, there could be, quote, potential death and destruction if he were to be charged. And so for Donald Trump, it was of note. He did not have a speaking opportunity, per se, inside of the courtroom. But that is where you have seen him time and again, and he did this last night, go and make the campaign stage his place to go and make his claims. And that's exactly what he did upon his return here to his Mar-a-Lago private club last night, in which he took direct aim at the district attorney who is bringing these charges against him, as well as the judge who is overseeing this case. Take a listen.
And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. The local failed district attorney charging a former president of the United States for the first time in history on a basis that every single pundit and legal analyst said there is no case. There's no case.
Stephen, it is a jury that, if this in fact goes to trial, will determine whether Donald Trump is guilty of the allegations or not. But when it comes to an election, it's going to be up to the voters at large to determine whether Donald Trump ascends to the Republican nomination and then the White House again. So him taking that microphone is essential and clearly trying to undercut the reputation of the individuals involved that are bringing this case, and potentially even the judge. Of course, this is coming out of Donald Trump's playbook that he has used for years now, for any time there's been an investigation or prosecutorial efforts made against him.
Yeah, and Vaughn, in that clip, we heard Trump say that there was no case, but he also made more pointed personal references to both Alvin Bragg and the judge in this case. What did he say?
Yeah, how about you let's take a listen, because it was not just this case either that he was bringing up, but he was brought up the Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis, who is investigating efforts to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia. He brought up the special counsel, Jack Smith, who is investigating the efforts to overturn the 2020 election ahead of the January 6th attack, as well as the classified documents case. So he was really making this a big picture effort to try to undercut the reputation of the individuals bringing these charges against him. And I think that in this case, Alvin Bragg and the attacks that he made against him are just one example. Take a listen.
The criminal is the district attorney because he illegally leaked massive amounts of grand jury information for which he should be prosecuted, or at a minimum, he should resign. Our justice system has become lawless. They're using it now, in addition to everything else, to win elections.
For fact's sake, there is no evidence that the district attorney leaked any information, as the former president alleges there. And instead, we have seen this playbook time and again from Donald Trump to play offense and try to undercut the right credibility of those who go after him in the court of law and the judges that oversee his case. And we are watching that play out in real time right now. Guys?
A great point, Vaughn. This indictment is unprecedented, but the strategy, not so much. Appreciate that reporting.
Now we're joined by NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos to break down these charges. Danny, so a term we keep hearing, gag order, gag order, gag order. That did not happen, but as we just heard from Vaughn, the judge was very specific to both sides, saying they should not, quote, jeopardize the rule of law. So I want to dig into some of Trump's comments at Mar-a-Lago just last night. Let's take a listen first.
I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris and now receives money from the Biden-Harris campaign, and a lot of it.
Very pointed remarks. Is Trump putting himself at risk by doing this just hours after the judge made his remarks, too.
Yeah, maybe. I have a theory that this is his clumsy attempt to spoil this jurisdiction, this county, so he can request a change of venue. In his mind, he'd love to get to Staten Island, but under the law, there's no guarantee, even if the judge granted that motion, which I don't think the judge would, that the case would even go to Staten Island. It could go to Queens or the Bronx. Just as bad jurisdictions for the president. But I was not surprised that the judge stopped short of issuing a gag order, but just made a verbal admonition from the bench. That's what I would have done as a judge, is just caution the parties. You don't want to wade into this controversy because it implicates the First Amendment, any gag order, and especially with a candidate for the presidency. Every word, arguably, that comes out of Trump's mouth, and some may laugh at this comment, but it's arguably political speech, which is the most cherished speech in our system, arguably more protected than other speech. So this is not something that the judge wanted to wade into. I wasn't surprised. He just sort of gave them a warning, a little amorphous, and then if Trump misbehaves, he could call him back to court and say, hey, what are you doing?
Especially since this is going to be playing out well into the 2024 election.
Well, yes, very much so. If the trial, it could go right up to the election itself. Just because they set a trial date that is before the election doesn't mean that can't get moved. It happens all the time in criminal and civil cases.
You know, the former president does like to delay legal proceedings pretty often. And on this front of the indictment, we finally got the indictment that we've been talking about for a while now, going through those 16 pages, these 34 felonies. First question, did you expect to see more in this indictment? And also getting those what were misdemeanor charges up to federal or to felony charges did not require federal law. It sounded like Alvin Bragg was saying that it was state election law as well as possibly. What did you think about that aspect?
I did expect there to be more charges, and I expected there to be charges other than the falsification of business records. I was surprised there were not charges like tax evasion. Although tax evasion is invoked, it's not separately charged. There's no extortion charge. Well, actually, there's no conspiracy charge. There's none of the things I expected to see. I am surprised that the DA has decided to go all in on just falsification of business records, and that he's decided to upgrade it to a felony. Well, I knew he would, because you don't convene a grand jury to return a true bill on just misdemeanors. So we did know these were going to be felonies, but I think this is a difficult case for a number of different reasons, most of which Trump's lawyers already articulated in their press conference.
And Danny, in addition to the unsealed indictment, I know the DA's office released a 14-page statement of facts. What's the difference there, and what did we learn from it?
I don't know. I haven't seen that before. And frankly, former DAs in the Manhattan DA's office were unfamiliar with it. I was on air yesterday with Catherine Christian, former Manhattan DA. She was unfamiliar with that practice of issuing a separate statement of facts. Normally, if you're going to have a long indictment with a lot of facts, you stick that in the same charging instrument. It's called a speaking indictment. In this case, they had a bare-bones indictment, no surprise there, and then this separate statement, which I thought was a little odd and didn't really give us a lot of information that we hadn't heard before. There were some new nuggets, but not a whole lot.
So still a lot to watch here. Danny Ceballos, thank you so much. And the political fallout from yesterday's arraignment was immediate, and reactions were sharply divided along party lines. NBC News chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker has reaction as an indicted former president runs for the White House again.
An unprecedented shakeup in the race for the White House in an already divided America. A former American president and the Republican frontrunner now criminally charged in a Manhattan court. Democrats reacting. Congressman Adam Schiff tweeting, "A somber moment in the life of our country," adding, "Nobody is above the law." But some Democrats could not contain their glee. Congresswoman Maxine Waters tweeting, "Hallelujah." But this measured response from the White House.
We are just not going to comment. We're not going to interfere. We're not going to politically interfere from here. And we've been consistent.
Though the prosecution of Mr. Trump by a Democratic DA largely uniting Republicans, saying it's an effort to take out President Biden's top challenger.
You cannot have a system where we're going after political opponents just because you want to play gotcha. That's not America.
Speaker Kevin McCarthy tweeting, Bragg's weaponization of the federal justice process will be held accountable by Congress. And this reaction from former Trump Attorney General turned critic Bill Barr.
This appears to be just a pathetically weak case that is, I think, demonstrably wrong on the law, which explains why the Department of Justice even after I left office, has never pursued.
And while the indictment may be mobilizing Mr. Trump's GOP rivals to close ranks around him now, Republican operatives predict to NBC News that may not last forever, especially with other investigations looming, though any sharpening in tone against Mr. Trump could be months away. Mr. Trump's next expected court appearance is in December. That's right when the GOP primary will be heating up. So expect the former president to use this indictment as a focal point in his campaign to take back the White House. Back to you.
Kristen, thanks so much.
All right, turning to the forecast now. Another round of massive storms pushing through the South and Midwest, leaving some 60 million people under severe weather alerts.
Yeah, we have images captured by an Illinois resident where storms touched down and brought tornadoes to the area. In her video, we can see debris flying around and landing in her yard. The storm also took off the roof of a gas station and a restaurant in the area, which eventually landed on top of a tire shop near this resident's home.
Wow, some incredible video there. Let's turn to NBC meteorologist Michelle Grossman, who's been tracking the massive storms we're looking at now. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning to you both. Yeah, we've been tracking them all night long in the overnight hours as well. And we're still seeing a very active radar this morning. And we're going to see this as we go throughout the Wednesday because we're looking at a strong cold front moving through. It's moving through really humid air. Look at this line of storms. You can see it stretching from Michigan and Wisconsin through Illinois right now down to Texas. Lots of lightning with these storms. Also really heavy rainfall. That's where you're seeing the brighter colors. So we do have severe thunderstorm watches. That's where you see the yellow boxes. Some of these storms are showing signs of rotation. That's where you're seeing those red boxes. Those are tornado warnings. So throughout portions of Illinois into Arkansas, also Missouri, that's been happening really all morning long. And we also do have a severe thunderstorm, tornado watch, for the next few hours. That's where you see the pink box. So we do have a very busy day. We're going to continue to watch these storms. And by the way, on the backside of this system, we're looking at very cold air still, below freezing wind chills in some spots. And that's bringing us some snow in some spots. So even blizzard conditions. As we go throughout today, we're going to see millions at risk for severe weather, and this will stay true tomorrow as well. So by Thursday, we're going to see these storms into the mid-Atlantic. We're looking at winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, damaging hail. Today, we're going to see hail as big as baseball size. We saw that overnight. We have pictures of that. Also, isolated tornadoes are possible tomorrow in the mid-Atlantic into portions of Virginia. So as we go throughout the day, we have winter alerts in place, blizzard warnings, ice storm warnings, winter storm warnings, crazy for April. Where you see the purple, that is your blizzard warning, and we will watch the snowfall and the winds really blow. That's why we're going to see impossible travel in some spots. All of these storms, as you saw, have a lot of rainfall with them. So it's like a sponge being squeezed. We're going to see the rainfall in many spots. We do have a flood watch in place in portions of Michigan, so Traverse City into Big Rapids. You could see some very heavy rainfall on some saturated grounds. So as we go throughout the day, also watching the wind, guys, lots going on. We're going to watch snow, wind, the storms, and also some flooding in some spots. I'll talk about that in the next hour.
The elements just keep coming, hoping those millions stay safe. Michelle, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.